Now I would like to invite our guest, Olivier Kuradi, from tomorrow. And this is just a great example of how a small company can really have a big impact and be very inspiring and maybe also provocative for the large players on the market. So a warm welcome to Olivier, and the screen is yours, and we're looking much forward to hear your speech to kick off the event together with us.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation. I hope you can all hear me. I will share a couple of slides here that showcase a little bit our journey as a startup. If I can just put this in full screen. Here you go. And this is actually speaking a lot to the first theme that you mentioned about the green transition, because our angle is really to talk about the data-driven green transition in order to make sure that we avoid having a world powered by greenwashing specifically. So a couple of words about myself. I'm actually half French, half Danish. I am coming from DTU. I've also been in France studying general engineering. I've been at IBM and Google, and then at a French startup, worked a lot with AI-related topics. And then been working at Tomorrow, which I founded in 2016, which is my answer, at least personally, to try to fix the climate on a very global scale. So if you look at the challenge that we're tackling, which is climate change, temperature is, of course, the prime indicator that something is wrong. And if you look at a very, very long time series, such as this one, that showcases in the last 10 to 11,000 years, the temperature changes. What is really worrying here is the speed at which the temperature changes. So you can see the temperature has evolved over time, but if you look at the last couple of decades, we've actually been taking almost 1 degree in 50 to 70 years, depending on exactly how you measure it. And if you imagine the sensitivity of the Earth ecosystem, of course, changing by just 1 degree is a huge change to both us humans and also to the biosphere. This is, of course, caused by CO2 emissions, as you all know, and this is an even longer time series that shows in the last 40,000 years what the CO2 concentration in the atmosphere is. And you see this spike to the right that is just shooting up, and that is, of course, worrying all of us. One thing to remember about CO2 emissions is that CO2 is a very, very inert molecule, very hard to suck back from the atmosphere. CO2 stays in the atmosphere between hundreds of years to thousands of years, which means that everything that we're putting up there needs to be considered as debt to our children and our grandchildren. Basically, there's no way this thing is going to disappear by itself unless we suck it back or that we don't emit it. So treat it as really as a debt problem. And the real problem here is that we're even accelerating our CO2 emissions. So you can see here, since the beginning of the century, the CO2 emissions that are happening, and you see the impact of the COVID-19, you see the small bump that is happening. We're talking about between -5 and -10% on a yearly basis, knowing that we were previously increasing at 2 to 3% year on year. The target that we're setting ourselves, if you want to have this 2-degree path, is -5% per year. So you see this gap of 5, 6, 7% per year, depending on how you exactly look at it, which shows the size and the magnitude of the challenge that we're having here. Why is that such a big challenge? And it's really because we're addicted to fossil fuels. So if you look at where energy comes from globally, you have 80% of that energy that comes from the fossil fuels. And you see they have an almost unstoppable growth in our system. And you see the renewables at the bottom, and you see hydro and nuclear, low carbon technologies that are gaining traction, but we're still far off. And this is why this is such a big challenge. And if you think a little bit about the power of oil, if you take 1 liter of oil, that's approximately 10 kilowatt hours of energy, it costs almost nothing. €1, something like that, 1 to 2 euros, depending on exactly how you count it. It's ultra portable. It weighs almost nothing. You can take it with you, and then you can fill out a boat and then start riding your boat or a motorcycle or something else. Imagine doing exactly the same thing with an alternative energy source. You need to store it. And if you look, for example, at electricity storage, you can look at a Tesla Powerwall, which is a good comparison. It would weigh maybe 100 times more. It would cost 1,000 times more, and it would store approximately the same energy, even if you could get energy from solar and wind for free in it. So again, that showcases just the amount of challenges we're up against and why we need all those innovative solutions. One last piece on this broader picture is that we actually came from a 100% renewable world. We used to chop down trees and heat ourselves with them. And then we discovered coal, and then we discovered oil, and we're able to build the first heat engines, the first steam engines, and build trains and so on. And you see that we've actually added layers and layers on top of that of energy sources, which have created the living standards that we're currently having. Greta says something that I really think is good. She says that the real danger is when companies and politicians are making it look like real action is happening, when in fact almost nothing is being done apart from clever accounting and creative PR. And it's very harsh, but I believe that there are some spaces where the creative PR and the clever accounting is really dangerous, because if you don't count things well, then you end up doing make-believe action. And one typical example is, for example, electric vehicles. If you charge, you can see in this picture, it's a bit funny, but if you charge your electric vehicle with a diesel generator, basically how much have you actually won, right? So this is why it's important to understand, is the electricity that I'm generating actually clean? And this showcases the importance of actually measuring things very well in order to be able to understand the impact that you're having. And this is for illustrative purposes. And electric vehicles climate impact, depending on the electricity mix that you're using. And you can see that in countries like Poland, for example, where there's a lot of coal-based electricity production, that the footprint of that vehicle would be close to the diesel one, even though it's better. But if you have low carbon electricity in the countries that you have to the right side, then suddenly the footprint is really lowered by a significant amount. So in this challenge, in this jungle of complicated assessments, how do you make sure that you're making the right decisions, either as a person or as a company? And we saw that problem being so complicated and coming up again and again that we created a company that addresses that, which is called Tomorrow. And I'm going to showcase you a little bit of the solutions we came up with here. So our thesis is really that the global economy is in the midst of the most profound transformation in history. 80% of the energy that we're using comes from fossil fuels. And if we want to be 100% renewable, 100% low carbon, we're basically going to reinvent 80% of the way we do things. And this is going to require insights about all the impact of all the solutions we come out with. Hence why it's so important. And unfortunately, you have the brightest minds in the world that are currently getting sucked into, Apple, Google, and Facebook. And we basically thought we need to create a company where all those people are not thinking about optimizing the ad industry, but thinking about climate change. So we have, our mission statement is to get the world to understand and reduce their carbon footprint. And we're doing that through a couple of products that I'm going to showcase you, and hopefully that will spark ideas and innovations in this workshop. The one obvious solution to climate change that is brought up in many places is to say, let's just electrify everything. Electric planes, electric heating, electric cars, electric whatnot. But we always have to think, as I mentioned before, what about electricity? Is it actually clean? How clean is the electricity used to electrify everything? Unfortunately, most of the electricity in the world is still generated mostly by coal generation. If you look at that machine, maybe you can see on the lower right side of the slide here, you have actually a small tractor here. I showcase you the scale of that machine and the amount of coal that we're actually digging every day in order to put into those machines. And this is actually an excavator from Germany in the lignite mine. So we built something called the electricity map in 2016. It's actually free. You can just go on it on electricitymap.org, or you can download the app. And what this does is that it shows in real time where the electricity comes from. The color on the map basically shows you, is it green or is it not? Is it low carbon or is it not? And it takes into account the imports and the exports. It takes into account whether or not the wind is currently blowing, therefore, if the wind turbines are currently generating electricity or not. And this enabled us to create a data set that in turn enables us to advise policymakers and companies into using electricity more optimally. You can see here, this is once it loads, and we'll see how well this works on Zoom, but this is basically an animation. You can find it on YouTube as well, that showcases how the country's carbon footprint of electricity changes over time. And you can see the small wind patterns coming over and flying over Europe, and you can see how the different countries start to become greener or darker depending on if the wind blows or if the sun shines. If you look at Germany, you see it blinking almost every day, and that's basically due to the solar production patterns that are happening every day. So an obvious conclusion when you see this is, if you really want to lower your electricity emissions, the first thing you can do is utilize electricity at a time where its footprint is lower. So at a time where the wind is blowing or the sun is shining. And so this is our first business model that we created at the company, is basically create an API that enables companies to optimize their electricity usage. And the best use case that we have is the partnership that we announced with Google a couple of months ago, where basically their data centers are working harder when the sun shines or when the wind blows. So there's a lot of AI jobs that they're running, training algorithms, BI tasks, and so on, that are flexible in time. And so they will basically delay them a little bit if they see that the sun is going to shine in a couple of hours, or they will move it ahead of time and do those tasks ahead if they see that the wind is not going to blow in the next couple of hours. So this is a typical use case that has huge impact. Another product that we're building is more on the personal side of things, looking at what are my personal emissions. And this is also an app that you can download completely open. It's called North. And what it does is that it calculates the climate impact of your daily choices by connecting with the apps and services you already use. So a couple of screenshots here to give you an idea of it. To the left side, you have an integration panel where you can connect different systems. For example, you can connect your Tesla, or you can connect your Reisekode for the Danes among us. So every time you would check in and check out in a transportation system, it would directly go into the app. And then you have this bubble view in the middle that enables you to see what is the relative footprint of the things I'm doing. You have the bubble of a car that showcases the emissions of a car ride compared to, you see a shopping cart next to that. That would be, for example, my shopping. And you see a small flame at the bottom. That's the energy that you're using. So by integrating to many systems like that, we can then start making comparisons. And I find it personally super exciting to be able to compare things that never have been compared before, which is my daily electricity usage compared to my meal, compared to a trip to France, for example. And so this is super exciting to see, again, what the power of data and data visualization can actually do. And the last product that we're currently building is the same, but for organizations. So we've seen that assessing climate impact for companies is extremely complicated because it's not automated, and you need a lot of domain expertise required. You need to understand what are the emission factors, the greenhouse gas protocol, what are the scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, how do I collect data? Does it actually make sense, this data that I'm collecting? Should I take into account methane emissions and all those things? So again, we're building a tool in the same spirit, in the same that it's automated. So you can, for example, just connect your accounting system. And from the accounting system, we look at the transactions happening, and using AI would then be able to tell you, well, look, 80% of your footprint actually comes from this conference that you organized where you took all those flights, transatlantic flights, for example. And an important piece of it is, if we want to be trustworthy on what we're doing, we need the carbon models to be open source to enable any scientist in the world or anyone who has questions about it to be able to look under the hood, say, okay, how does this work? And maybe as a person or as a scientist, you have a better model or a better idea or domain-specific knowledge, and then you can suggest changes to that. It also means that anyone who wants to build a product that uses carbon models can just piggyback on the work that we've done because it's open. And this is really how we're getting, this large-scale impact on a worldwide level. So how the solution actually works is that first step, you collect some data. You could connect to your bank account. You could connect to your Amazon cloud account in order to understand when the servers that you're using are running. Then we're assessing the impact using the carbon models that I just mentioned. And then comes the piece where you want to take action. And that's either by setting some goals, getting some recommendation, purchasing carbon offsets. It can be many different things. And then at the end, of course, you want to communicate that you have taken climate action, but in a trustworthy matter, exactly like Greta said. So if you want to use this, you can join the waitlist at bloomclimate.com. And I guess this concludes the end of my talk. And I don't know if we have time for any questions, but if there are any, I'd be happy to take a few of those.
Thank you so much, Oliver. A fantastic presentation. So we will have time for questions in the chat. So we'll activate the chat now, so you can have a dialogue directly with Oliver. And yeah, what an amazing way to kickstart this event. So I wrote down a few things. So first of all, reinvent 80% of what we're doing now. That's a big job. So it's good that we're having a lot of teams to onboard this. And then it's like not clicks, but maybe you do one click climate action. So look for Oliver on the chat and go in dialogue. I'll just change the slide here. So let's give a virtual hand to Oliver and join the chat. And then, yeah, just a small comment. If anyone is watching from Facebook, you need to jump to the Zoom link to join the chat. So that's it. So we'll have a few minutes in the chat now and we'll join you shortly. Thank you. So welcome back again. So now we're ready with the next section. So just summarizing, we will have questions for the speakers. From now on, we'll have the 3 tracks, and after each of the tracks, we'll have time for questions. And one other thing, all the slides, now I saw Oliver uploading them in the chat. We will also provide these for you online, so you can get them later. But now, let me see. It's time for the different tracks. So the first track is green transition. And we will have now 8 challenge briefs in total. Each presenter will have 4 minutes to do the pitch. And we will, as a small service, make a little notification when the speaker has 30 seconds left. So Marie will help with that. We'll shift that role. And that's actually it on the practical side. So I'm getting super excited now to hear all the pitches and bring all the partners on stage. So the first person we would like to welcome on the screen together with us is Alfa Laval with Henrik Røssel, Innovation Lead at Alfa Laval Copenhagen. So you will now have 4 minutes to do the presentation, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and pleasure to do the presentation for Alfa Laval. I will do it like this. What you see here is actually a plant producing fresh water, taking seawater, removing the salt, and then make it usable for various purposes. Water is, you can say, a scarce resource, so it's quite important that we actually have enough and that we treat the water we actually have for the right purpose. Representing an old company, I mean, we have 136 years history behind us. We are very traditional in what we do. We do a lot of stainless steel, and that is actually the topic. But having, you can say, water as the issue, the line we would like you to actually think about when we do this. Our title is called Beyond Steel because this is actually what we're looking for. When we look into what we actually do, then we have, you can say, equipment and spare parts. Service made out of steel is our core products. We have here 2 examples of the first one that could be installed on a vessel. It could be installed also in a, you can say, in a factory. It could be on a platform, delivering the needed fresh water or drinkable water or technical water, depending on, you can say, the degree of cleanness that is actually needed. And it contains a lot of stainless steel, and it's actually quite energy intensive when it's up and running. And that is also something to consider. When we look into the lower part, then, because one thing is to actually create clean water, another thing is when you have used the water, then you have basically not used all of it. So most of the water actually goes back from industries, from our local households and so on, back in to be cleaned to some degree. And it's also stainless steel that we have been producing, and you can say that is what is being used in the market. So this is not just for Alfa Laval. And I would like you to consider how to do this in the future. Because we need to take care about the water. We need to make sure that we actually can deliver both clean but also sustainable water in the future by using equipment that actually can make the difference for us to be able to use the water we have in a good way and also secure that we have enough water for a growing population globally seen. Some of the considerations to look into for this challenge is actually, you can say, the way we do our business today is the classic capital sales and service, meaning that we basically offer something to our customers, and if we have the right price and the right offering, then they would select us as a supplier, and we will deliver according to their specification. But we actually believe that the future is changing. And we believe that, you can say, the period we have had now actually indicates that we need to look at this in a completely different manner or different way compared to what we have actually done in maybe the past 100 years. So how could business models actually look like? And who would own these business models? Does it have to be the suppliers or the manufacturing companies like Alfa Laval? Or could it be somebody else? Every time you make a change, you can say it has an impact on the finance. How could this actually be looked at? How could this be solved? So you actually, you can say, control your finance during this transition. We would like to look into key data, just like looking at the previous presentation from Olivier, saying, what data do you actually need? Because we have a lot of sensors on our equipment, and how can we use this knowledge that we actually have? What kind of data is needed, and how do we transform this data into new value, new assets that can be used? It could be optimizing the way we have actually designed our equipment and so on. How does it look from, you can say, IIoT or just IoT? How do we actually integrate the equipment? What kind of systems do we need? And how do we make sure we can actually monitor all year long? Because that might be a new requirement compared to what we have done so far, based on the business models. We also believe that this requires a new way of thinking in terms of product design. We could also look at, you can say, the value chain. One thing is the current setup we have of our value chain and supply chain. Maybe that needs to be looked at in a completely different way. We could look at risk and benefit. How do we? Yeah, I'll do so. Material and structures, production setup. There might be a second-hand market or for refurbished market, and maybe we should share data. But basically, you can say, how do we make more sustainable clean water as a service, or that could be a solution built on our key technologies and digital capabilities going forward? That is what we would like you to look into. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Henrik. That was a super inspiring challenge brief, so a lot to work with there. We will have questions at the end, so we'll just go directly to the next speaker. So the next speaker we would like to invite to go on screen with us is...
So the second track that we have chosen to include in the Virtual Innovation Sprint, we have called it the Future of Works. And what's quite exciting about that is both that I think a lot of us has the personal sensation that it has been a challenge, but also brought new opportunities to work on virtual platforms, which is related to one of the challenges. The two challenge pitches are going to be quite diverse, but we also invite you to take inspiration in both of them. They are really ambitious and they are really on board the Virtual Innovation Sprint and really want to onboard some of the participants to work on this. So I'm quite excited to hear the presentations now. The first one up is the Secretariat of the World Congress of Architects in 2023. They have already set up a secretariat here in Copenhagen, and they are really ambitious in terms of how this Congress is going to take place and the type of solutions that they're needed. So I'm really honored to invite Annette Bleiwald, which is the CEO of the Secretariat, to let us in on what are some of the relevant challenges that the young participants can work on during the sprint. So over to you, Annette, the screen is yours.
The whole theme of it is, it's about having 10 to 15,000 participants in Copenhagen, about 3,000 exhibitors, and maybe many other people coming just to come to Copenhagen and have a look, wives and children to follow with the delegates. And it's in the beginning of July, hoping that the weather will be fantastic. The Congress is every 3 years. And the idea is to, of course, as congresses are, to exchange knowledge, to discuss, to study, experience, meet new people. And they are normally mostly researchers, practitioners, investors, producers, students, and we hope politicians. Because we think it is very important to tell about how architecture and the building sector can help to achieve the 17 Sustainable Development Goals and the overarching principle of leaving no one behind. So we are very focused on that aim of achieving the goals. And in 2023, we have 7 years left before we should all have accomplished the goals in 2030. We have a focus on the young people, and that's why it's especially interesting for us to be part of this challenge. And we have all the way through had a focus on reducing CO2 and make it a more or less climate neutral Congress, which is a challenge in itself. But we would like to do that to save resources, to reduce waste, and also with a view to air tickets and air traffic, and how could we help to reduce that. But then came the further challenge of how can we engage more people, also people who cannot maybe themselves travel, maybe because of they could have a disability or they might not be able to pay to go to Copenhagen, which is also a fairly expensive city. So how do we make a kind of hybrid for everybody to participate? But then came the COVID-19 and pushed us further into this idea about how do we actually make a Congress in the future? How could we make it more virtual? I mean, normally it's very much about gathering, being together, discussing, meeting. And there's also a very big part, which is an exhibition part of the Congress, which is also a very big part of the economy of the Congress. So how can exhibitions, for instance, be more virtually? How can they tell what they would like to do in another way than the usual kind of booths where you stand there and you have some goodies for the people who come by? You have to think another way of contacting clients. And then there are sponsorships also. How is that? So the technical solutions, what will they be in the future for our event and for other big events? And of course, this will have some financial consequences. How would the price structure be for virtual participation and for physical participation? So that's our channels. And we would love to have some fantastic suggestions from you. Thank you very much.
And it's really great to see you active in the chat. The next pitch on a challenge within the Future Works is a collaboration with the European Space Agency and their Business Incubator Center that is based here in Denmark. So a very appropriate challenge when you are a place like Skylab, where we want to think beyond just the globe in terms of the challenges that we're embracing here and how we're taking on sustainability. Unfortunately, we have a few challenges of connecting with Sune now, so we will make sure that Sune gets the opportunity to speak later and to pitch the challenge. So for now, we will continue with the next track. That will also be the final track where we're inviting externals to pitch the concrete challenges that they have developed for the innovation sprint. Yeah, So over to you, Christine.
Thank you. Yes, so let's continue with the next track theme. And just to highlighting, if Sune comes back, we'll invite him in today. But for now, we continue in the program and take the next track. I hope you can see the slides, which is new cities. So the first one I would like to invite on the stage is a speaker from Rampel called Thomas Dunweber. So you also have 4 minutes now, and 30 seconds before ending, we'll let you know that the time has been used. So a big warm welcome to you, Thomas, and the screen is yours. Good luck.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Christina. I hope you can hear me. And while you respond to that, I will share my screen, which I've hopefully done. Good. I haven't. Give me a second. Good old technical issues here. There we go. Share. And the bigger version. All right, here we are, right? Stop me if you can't hear me or see anything. So thanks, Christina. And hello, everybody. Hello, friends. Hello, peers. Hello, bright minds. I'm Thomas. I'm representing Ramble. And at Ramble, we are all about creating sustainable societies where people and nature flourish. And we have an awesome challenge brief for you today, which is also a huge and very interesting problem. It's about clean air in new cities. And the reason for that is that when it comes to clean air, it's something that we want, but something we don't have. So here's the problem. According to the World Health Organization, 8 million people die every year from air pollution. That was 8 million people. On top of this, 91% of the world's population lives in places where air quality exceeds recommended limits. In other words, this means that only 9% of us are living in a place where we have a good air quality or recommended air quality levels. Are you breathing clean air right now? At least the problem is huge, right? And it's not just a problem that, as I'm alluding to, which is happening somewhere in a far region, distant, very distant and far away from us here at Denmark, in Denmark and Europe. In fact, air pollution is the biggest environmental health risk in Europe, according to the European Environment Agency. The biggest environmental health risk. But as always, far from enough is being done to solve this problem. In Denmark, a Ramble Better Cities study has shown that air quality is rated lowest when Danes describe the city they live in. At the same time, it's also the factor which most Danes rate as crucial for creating an attractive city to live in. Looking at the facts, this comes from a country which can pride themselves of having close to the best air quality in the world, right? And if that's the case, where does that leave those countries who are not so well off when it comes to air quality? We believe it's fair to say that the world wants clean air, but doesn't have it. So here's our challenge to you. When imagining new cities on a global scale, what does that look like from a clean air perspective? How can we approach this problem from new angles that speed up solving the problem? What incentive structures will prime cities to act now? And how can we commercialize air quality and clean air to create solutions with a sustainable business model, both financially and environmentally? Those are some of the tough questions we'd like your help to tackle. And when doing that, there's just a couple of things we'd like you to consider. However, overall, we'd like your approach not to be narrowed too much, so that you can attack the problem from any angle that you see fit and come up with any ideas that you can, right? But here's just a thing to consider, which comes from all the work that we've done in Ramble with air quality. And that is that please consider who the user is of your suggestion or solution and what their incentives are to act. For example, we are currently not necessarily seeing a great eagerness from cities to share or investigate the state of their air quality. Maybe because a bad result could mean decreases in property value, or that people will leave the city entirely. Another example is that who is willing to pay for solving for the problem, right? So will citizens be willing to pay and accept an increase in taxes, or can this be done without involving citizen funds? So that's our challenge brief to you, and together we're really looking forward to providing clean air to everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Thomas. That was a super exciting brief as well. So we actually are lucky to have Sune back.
Ja, Sune Nordentoft Lauritsen, han er faktisk lige nu, he's actually active right now in an acceleration program. So we're extremely lucky that he has the time to onboard us here. And with all the respect of sometimes having complications to join. But we are super excited to welcome you, Sune, on the screen to present us the challenge that you want to bring forward to the participants. The screen is yours, Sune.
Can you hear me? Can you see me and can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Sune.
Okay, great. Thank you. And sorry again for the delay. So my name is Sune, and I'm the manager of the European Space Agency Business Incubation Center in Denmark, ESA Big Denmark in short. So the European Space Agency is basically Europe's NASA. So this is the space agency of the European nations. So at ESA Big Denmark, which is an incubation center, we help Earth benefit from space. And we do this by supporting startups and corporations in utilizing space technology, which can create a positive impact on the world and also help to contribute to a more sustainable society. So our challenge is entitled Space for SDGs, because it's about utilizing space for supporting implementation of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So you might ask, how can space contribute to, for instance, SDG 2, reducing hunger through optimizing crop production in poorer parts of the world? Or how can space contribute to SDG 8, supporting decent work and economic growth by bringing education to refugee kids in remote areas of the world? Or contributing to climate action and management of natural disasters, for instance, managing forest fires? Well, the answer is that space can contribute to all those goals by utilizing satellites in orbit around the Earth as an enabling technology. So what does that mean? Well, it means that applications of satellites of many kinds can be applied to drive really radical change in the capabilities of people on Earth, just like the internet has been an enabling technology. And there are really three main domains of satellite applications that can be enabled as a technology. First of all, satellite-based navigation, positioning. You already know GPS and are familiar with those kinds of satellites. Secondly, satellites that are observing the Earth, providing geo-related information on what is going on in the oceans, on land and in the atmosphere. And then thirdly, satellite-based communications that can provide global connectivity for IoT, media and internet, also in more remote parts of the world. So this is the key question of our Space for SDG challenge. How can applications of satellites be exploited to the benefit of a more sustainable society? And so what we would like participants to do is develop solution which, of course, utilizes applications of satellites and which also creates value for end users. But they should also consider, of course, how to make the solution commercially viable, how to commercialize the solution in a startup or in an existing company. And if they want to develop this idea into a commercial solution, we are there to help you in the European Space Agency Incubation Center. So in conclusion, space technologies are not only poised to be enabling technologies for commercial businesses, but they are also poised to have global impact on sustainable development. And this is why the UN has started a program called Space for SDGs, space supporting sustainable development goals. And this program promotes how space can be used in support of the 2030 agenda for sustainable development. And please take a look at the site for inspiring examples. So we look very much forward to your ideas. Thank you very much for letting me present today.
Thank you very much, Sune, for a really inspiring presentation. And I hope that some of you would be excited to onboard this, that has a bit more focus on an actual technology, how we're utilizing the full potential of satellites to move to a green transition. We have time for one question, Sune, and I think what could be really interesting maybe was if you could come with an example on what could be a sort of an idea and a solution that the students could go towards in this relatively broad challenge, just to make it a bit more concrete without saying that that's the only way to onboard and tackle this challenge, Sune.
Yeah, so of course.
Already, right, and there's people in the room already working with this, so maybe.
Yeah, so of course, one of the challenges I already, one of the ideas or domains I already mentioned is that there's a challenge in providing sustainable food production across the world, especially in areas that are not so, doesn't have an extended infrastructure. By utilizing satellite data, we can help optimizing, for instance, crop production in poor parts of the world to feed people that really need nutrients of different kinds. So this is the view from space that can provide and enable, enhance the productivity of crop production in parts of the world that really needs sustainable nutrition. This is just one example.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Sune. So that was lucky. We got all the technical issues sorted out. So apologies for that, but let's get the next speaker on. So we continue to the other track with new cities. So an exciting or a very good speaker we have coming up is Katja Gry, Managing Director for Hello Science. And we have in various different projects close collaboration with Hello Science. And they are collaborating with Nilfisk and Novozymes on this challenge. So I would like to give the screen to Katja to present the next challenge brief. 4 minutes to you, and we'll let you know when we have a few seconds left. Or you'll bring a video, I hope. So the screen is yours. Welcome.
Unmute myself. There we go. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Christine, for having us. We're very excited to be here today and very excited to start this great collaboration with all of you out there listening. I'm Katja, and this is Alfred. And we're here today to represent Hello Science. And Hello Science is an incubation platform for SDG startups and companies and people working to solve SDG problems. And whoever goes with a good solution on this challenge can also come there and be incubated if they're interested. But today we brought together Nilfisk and Novozymes. And for those who don't know these two companies, Nilfisk is very big and leading on business-to-business cleaning and cleaning devices. And Novo works with enzymes and has made many enzymes for washing powder, but also for different other uses. And the reason we have brought them together on this challenge, which we call Impact the Future of Sustainable Cleaning, is that we believe this COVID-19 pandemic is just the tip of the iceberg. And this raised awareness and focus that has become around getting clean hands and being hygienic and cleaning all the time. It's quite important that it does not affect our climate and also biodiversity. Right now we're using lots of chemicals, we're using lots of disinfectants, but what is this actually doing to our environment? So therefore we would like to join this challenge, hopefully to have you all help us rethink what clean is and what it really means, and also to explore how we can develop new solutions to assure and figure out when do we need to clean. What is clean? Can we make an app device that says this is clean now, so you don't need to run it over with the new cleaning devices just yet and use chemicals on that? But in order to kick this off right, we actually created a little film. So I was wondering if the technician, Uffe, can you put on the little film? The teaser we have for the challenge? Excellent, thank you.
Turn up the volume.
Turn up the volume.
The COVID crisis has shown us how the way we live, we interact, we work with each other day to day is so dependent on a clean and hygienic environment, much more than ever before. And so this world needs new cleaning solutions, and we need to collaborate together to make innovation fast enough.
We want to explore the concept of clean with partners, startups, researchers and students. The challenge is about detecting clean, intelligent cleaning, ecological cleaning, microbial cleaning, and psychology of cleaning.
The pandemic has caused an awareness of the value of clean and hygienic. Everyone is working on that. I think it's super cool to be part of that journey.
We offer invitation to our live lab, long-term digital incubation, mentorship, legal advice, co-working space, lab space for testing, micro grants, and eventually this can lead to research collaborations and joint ventures.
The business opportunities around the corner in the field that will pop out of this has a fantastic future, in my opinion.
Yes. So this can hopefully help inspire, and you can see there are 5 different areas in which, or themes, as you might say, in which we want to focus. And in relation to the support that we're also providing from Nilfisk and Novo Nordisk, we think it's really important that when we are solving these SDG problems, that we work across and we collaborate across. Therefore, we've chosen 2 quite different companies, very complementary companies, to support you throughout this great sprint, and hopefully we can come up with some new great and groundbreaking ideas that can impact the sustainable cleaning future. Will you talk a little bit, Alfred, about what can actually come out of this in the end?
I have 10 seconds, I think. But we're looking for everything from ideas to early stage solutions to more mature startups that can challenge what clean means. And we have access to mentors from both Novo Nordisk and
yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you for the challenge brief. Both of you, Katja and Alfred, fantastic. You're in the studio with us. We have this big screen over here, so it's just good to see friends in the room with us. So we are having 1 challenge brief left, and then we'll take questions for all the 3 briefs. So the next on stage is Linnea, and I would like to welcome Ditte Lysgaard Vind, and she's a managing partner of Linnea. And you also have 4 minutes to pitch your challenge brief. So I would just like to give the stage to you. Okay, so what I'm hearing is that Ditte is not ready, but it is the last one. So we don't have any more coming up. We'll just take a question for, I saw a question in the chat for Thomas. So Linda, do you have it, or otherwise I have a question. So for Thomas, maybe you could elaborate a little bit on the projects that you've worked with already within clean air from Rambøll. What kind of directions have you gone into, so we get some examples on clean air from your perspective?
Sure, I'm happy to. So there's plenty, right? And the one we'd like to highlight is one called SHARE, which is coming out of our Innovation Accelerator initiative, which is an innovation incubator that we run every year. And that goes very much on hyperlocal air quality monitoring. So just knowing that air quality is poor in Copenhagen right now, for instance, is okay, but knowing that it's down by Sortedamsøen, or like one specific spot that the pollution is coming from, is much more helpful in terms of targeting the problems. That being said, though, we're happy to talk about that, and they're doing great work. But we also like to get different angles on how we can speed up this solving this huge problems where we don't really see a huge you could say eagerness to invest a lot of money. The interesting part here is that it's an interesting framing on climate change, right? Because all the air pollution comes from all the bad stuff we're doing to our climate, and air quality then means that there's an urgency because we are dying from it. So hopefully, by focusing on this problem, we can really get a lot of action, behavioral triggers to happen, just as we've seen with COVID, where the urgency of doing something has sparked a lot of activity around the globe. I'll pause there.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Thomas. We have another question from the chat. That is the solutions the students should come up with. Can they only address the city governments or also address the national government? So we can't be also interested to implement new methods from this perspective. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on this.
Yes, certainly. I think I misunderstood that question first, if it was like out on the countryside or something. but national levels, definitely. I think from as I tried to sort of present in the brief, what we see is difficult is to find the right incentive structures that will trigger actions, right, and people that actually wants to do something about this. So if our bright minds here figure out that that's because we need to address higher up, then that's what we should do.
Great, thank you so much,
Thomas.
Fantastic. So I think we'll wait with the last question. We'll have Ditte present the last challenge brief for today. So I would like to give the stage to you.
Yes. Just 1 second. Thank you very much for having me. I come from Linear Group. I don't know if you have the slides. Otherwise, I'll share my
can't see the slides actually yet.
It's from Morten. Otherwise, I'll just share it.
There we go.
What we essentially do at Linear is we try to design the world of tomorrow with the waste of today, while at the same time working towards a world without waste. So that's also what we want help with in this regard. And if you see on the picture, you see a lot of textile waste. Every year in Denmark, more than 40,000 tons of textiles are being burned. And that's not the most efficient way to utilize the waste. So we're trying to look at, can we take the challenge of from the textile industry with the waste stream, and then combine it with the current challenges in the built environment in terms of the very large negative footprint that we have, and combine that into one solution. And that's essentially what we would love your help with. How can we make sure that we don't burn as many textiles, give them a new life, instead use the qualities that the materials have by utilizing them in the built environment, essentially maybe looking towards the built environment as material banks, while we're looking towards the industry of textile to textile recycling advances. So that's essentially what we want help with. We're very open to how the solutions might be. If you are looking towards the first part in sense of how do we design the world of tomorrow with the waste of today, or if you're looking towards how can we essentially make sure that we don't have the waste stream going forward. What we ask you to do is just very much be mindful that we really want the solutions that really solve the problem. And by that we mean we're not so much looking towards some of the solutions in terms of maybe if you have a clean cotton stream or something like that. We really want solutions that tackle the main problem, which is all of these composite materials of essentially plastics. So the large scale solutions, and that you help us by utilizing our model. We call it TIME. It's essentially an MIT innovation model that we just added the environment to, and that you help us by assessing the ideas through our model. And we're happy to share more on why we use it and how we use it and all of these different things. But essentially, we're super open to helping you help us solve the textile problem utilizing the built environment. We have a lot of projects where we can essentially test the solutions once we find them. We already have this solution, which is at the end of the wall. It's actually, we have a lot of textile waste there, which is acoustic panels, because we found that they have a functionality in terms of creating better acoustics. So that's one solution that you could help us elaborate on, but we're hoping that you find many, many more ways that we can utilize the textile waste and use the built environment as a material bank. That was it for me.
30 seconds left. Yeah, but you're finished on time. Fantastic. Thank you, Ditte.
Yes, so let's take a question more before we continue in the program. So I would like to ask you, Ditte, actually, and it goes also across for the other challenge from Hello Science with Novo Science and Nilfisk. So these two challenges are you need integrated, you need multiple players to develop with you. So for the textile industry and for you, Linnea, and you, Ditte, what kind of stakeholders do you see as important to co-develop a solution for your challenge? If you could reflect a little bit on that.
Yeah, that's a great question, because you're absolutely right. With circular economy in general, and with this as well, it's really a matter of cross-sector collaboration and finding partners that you're not used to working with. So definitely some of the partners that we see is, of course, the textile industry on the one end, it's the developers within the built environment, it's the architects, but it's also very much the waste management companies that have the textile waste today. We're looking towards them having way more textile waste because we have to collect it. So essentially the consumer could also be a partner. The material producers and the companies that we have us help develop solutions. What we've been successful at so far is essentially finding production partners that are not used to working with the material, but have production capabilities that match what we want done. So essentially there's a unlimited amount of potential partners, but definitely the combination of taking the textile industry, the built environment, and the waste handlers, I think would be key.
Thank you so much, Ditte. I think that's a very nice note to end off for all the challenge briefs, because we're here with 8 different partners that are going to collaborate also behind the scenes and with the students, because it's a lot of the challenges are cross-sectoral, so we can really support each other on the journey. And that was the last challenge brief we had. So just a big virtual clap. We have it on the screen as well. But thank you so much. And that was all 8 briefs.
It's been really great. And this is absolutely also a learning for us in terms of having so many presentations on short time. So well done to everybody. Again, the detailed challenge descriptions and the slides are going to be available on the website. for you to dig into further. And I know their LinkedIn profiles have also been shared in the chat, so please also feel welcome to connect and network in that regards. This was the presentations. That was very much the essence of the first part of the webinar. We have a few more slides, so hang in there about the next steps. But before we go into the details of those, I know I have highlighted it before, but there is a lot of people that is onboarded this and that has been sprinting the last 5 weeks in terms of developing and preparing both for the weekend, but also today. And a lot of this work is actually carried out by volunteers and organizations that finds this relevant and exciting for them to grow. And I'm very happy now to invite one of the volunteers that has been sitting in one of the other rooms, Olivier, to the couch here.
Come to the couch.
And Olivier is part of a organization across Danish universities called the SDG Student Ambassadors. And I just have a brief question to you, Olivier, which is basically about why are you involved in this as a volunteer? What is your basic motivation to onboard this? That I know is a lot of work and will definitely also be a lot of work for the coming weeks to come.
Yeah, well, thank you for the question, first of all. I think the answer to that lies in the DNA of our organization and also our members. Because we are...
I think you need a mic. Is it on already? I'll just hold it here.
Should I start over?
No, just...
Because we in SDG Student Ambassadors strive to engage university students to work with the SDGs, both within but also beyond their academic careers. And then you might ask, well, how do we actually do this? Well, of course, we do it by helping you out with, or Skylab out with the events such as this fantastic virtual innovation sprint, but we also do it by asking experts to help us deep dive into how the more technical aspects of applying these global goals are. And then, of course, we also do it because we think it's fun and we like it.
Thank you very much, Olivier. And I think definitely having organizations on board, then we make sure that this is an event that's relevant, both educational, but also for young volunteers, so that we make sure to have that energy. Normally, when we facilitate big events, we would have all of you sitting in front of us or connecting virtually in different ways. So it's really important for us to grasp the nerve and make sure that we make something that's relevant both for the education, but also that goes beyond the education and maybe the startup that you're involved in, but build the learnings together with us. So thank you very much for joining us, and also thank you in advance for all the work that is to come.
Thank you for all the hard work.
Yeah, thank you very much, Olivier. So we hope that you were further enlightened in terms of what the program is going to be all about, what the challenges that you might be inspired in terms of working with. So we will have a short break now, and Christine will just let you know that it's not stopping now. We're going to have a short break from the couch. It's getting very warm in here, but the chat is actually going to continue.
Yeah, let's just highlight a little bit. I think we have some bullets for you here. Yeah, let me see. Yeah, we encourage you to stretch your legs, get out, get some fresh air, water, some calorie refreshments there. And again, if you're watching from Facebook, remember that you can't join the chat, but go on the Zoom link and you have access to everything. And also, if you join later, the history will not be available, but it will be available for you when you join. Yeah, so that's it. So we'll take a small break now and engage in the chat. Our partners are still there, so direct questions to them. And we're looking forward for the next section in a few minutes.
So hopefully see you in the webinar too, starting at 1:30. Yeah, but take a break and see you very soon.
We can give a small cliffhanger there because we had a question from the audience. What is circular economy? So that's exactly what we'll highlight now. We'll have all the university experts joining on stage to give some small briefs on what circular economy means, what frameworks to use, which tools to use, and best practice examples. So that is really something you can take away. So hang in there. Yes.
And see you very soon.
Hi again, everyone. Welcome back to part 2 of the kickoff webinar for Let's Reopen a Sustainable Circular Society. So we just stretched leg, got some water. I hope you did the same. And for the new joiners, welcome to you. So we just had an exciting morning with a lot of speakers presenting all the challenge briefs that are going into the virtual innovation sprint. So yeah, I'm just even more excited now. And I can see the chat is very active. So for this part as well, just engage as much as you can in the chat. Ask questions directed to one of the speakers. And the slides will be shared with you afterwards. Yeah, we can see you. You're with us in the studio here at DTU Skylab, where we're placed right now. We will record the sessions, so these will also be available after the event. So right now, I would like to highlight what we are waiting now. So as I said, we just had the part 1. Now we're going for part 2. And that is where we get the experts from universities on stage to present circular economy as a concept. What does it entail? And look into which frameworks and methods and tools is already out there for us to use now. And then best practice examples. And also it's interesting that we're having a lot of different universities joining. So it will be, yeah, I will show that later. And with me here, I have Marie. So we're co-hosting today. So yeah, I'm sure you're also looking forward for the next session we're having now.
Yeah, we had a great start before lunch. What's really nice for us sitting here in the studio, of course, we're going to have some of the guests joining us here and live transmitting from DTU Skylab, is also to see how active you are in the chat, because that's really when we get a grasp and we make sure that we put everything on the website that you have of questions and clarification, but also to see just the general excitement of the people that are onboarding and curious to join. Yeah.
Okay, so just highlighting a little bit that if you're joining now and you would like to be a mentor, because we have an audience full of different profiles, we still have a spot. So just contact either Analia or Jesus for joining to support the teams throughout the virtual innovation sprint. And for the newcomers, again, just showcasing our website. All the information can be found there, and the slides and the videos will be found there under the program site. And as I said just briefly before, here you can see an overview of all the universities we have, and they will each join today. The only one not joining is University of Copenhagen, which will have the pleasure of having a keynote for the sprint weekend. So when we're finishing with this session, you will have an extended toolbox of methods and tools that you can use throughout the sprint. And again, engage in the chat. I've said that already. Direct the questions to the speakers. And we'll also take some of the questions in the studio here. So that's an introduction from us. So now we're happy again to welcome someone in the studio. Not in the couch for now, but we will welcome Jason Lee Ying from DTU Entrepreneurship Center. Center for Technology Entrepreneurship, DTU Entrepreneurship. And you will have the pleasure of starting the session now. What we'll hear now is that it's a talk more about innovation. So we called it opportunities under industry turbulence. And also what was interesting is that Jason was active in the debate throughout the COVID-19 crisis. And I'm just super excited to hear your talk now. Jason, you had collaborated with Berkeley on an article, but I will give the talk to you. So over to you, Jason. You have around 8 minutes for the talk. Yeah, I can see you, so welcome.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Marie. I'm going to start my presentation. Thank you, everyone. Nice meeting you. My name is Jason. I'm the professor in innovation and entrepreneurship. I'm also the research director at the DTU Center for Technology Entrepreneurship. And today I have the pleasure to be the first person in the afternoon session to give a talk. And usually, you know, when you're attending any kind of a conference, the first person who is giving a speak is either a political leader or a generalist. So I am not a political leader, I'm a generalist. All right, start sharing the screen. I hope you can see the slides right now.
We can.
Yeah, I'm turning it into full screen. I don't know.
Make it in presenter mode. We can see your slides.
It starts right now, right?
Yeah, we're seeing the wrong display. We can see your next slide, but.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Go to the top to display settings.
Go to the top with display setting. And swap.
Okay, good. Now it looks more beautiful. Right, this is my pleasure to have a talk to this Reopen a Sustainable Circular Society. And there's a reason that why we're reopening, because we used to be closed for quite a while. And the reason why for being closed is because of the COVID-19. That's why I'm going to give a small talk about how we're going to navigate opportunities for innovation and entrepreneurship under this situation. I will start with some theory, a very simple stuff to understand. The Joseph Schumpeter is the funding person of economics for innovation. And his seminal work in the 1930s already laid out the two fundamental mechanisms for innovation. And this is so true and is so interesting and important for us to understand the basics of innovation and entrepreneurship. And he said, basically, there are only two types of innovation in the society. The first, they call it widening. It's the Mark I. That is usually created by startups or small companies. And this is characterized by creative destruction. Imagine and think about these startup companies who started the business, Microsoft, the Google, whatever. They are all started by looking into the market. There's a new opportunity, there's new technology. They're going to destruct the existing market structure, right? So this is innovation to disrupt others' markets. And then there's the second type of innovation, that's what we call a deepening. That is mainly done by the accumulative knowledge and resources created by large companies. If you think about these large pharmaceutical companies, they spend millions and billions of euros and dollars into R&D and then introducing new drugs. This is a typical mechanism of creative accumulation that is deepening the knowledge for innovation. Then actually, deepening can also lead to potential cannibalization of their own market, because you are deepening the knowledge, you are creating something new, which probably eating up your existing market. If you look at the entire industry right now, it's just a continuous evolution between widening and deepening, and then creating opportunity for widening again, then it keeps going on, right? Okay, that is relatively easy to understand. And this is the first dimension I'm considering. And then this is and then I'm going to add one more issues here. But before explaining that, the fundamental mechanism why companies and individuals are taking innovation, they are basically based on two fundamental reasons. One is what we call it slack, meaning you have too much resources and you can afford explore new opportunities. But quite often, managing innovation is also under the pressure of crisis. When people are under crisis, the only way to get out of the crisis, to get out of this fierce competition, is actually to innovate. Now we're actually focusing on the crisis management. Here, the biggest crisis is coronavirus. When we look at the media, business media, we see a lot of anecdotal cases, stories of how companies are doing new things under the corona situation. And I came out with this new framework, putting everything into something that is more easy to understand. It is also becoming a tool for us to understand, not only as an analyzer, but it can also be an idea creation tool or mechanism. So the first dimension I already explained before, that's the distinction between the creative destruction and the creative accumulation, right? And the second dimension, the x-axis, is basically you look at is there any change the corona situation is affecting the industry's upstream supply chain, or on the other hand, is it affecting the downstream market value chain? Now then we have four different situations, and look at the top right corner. We call them the option makers because the downstream market value chain has been changed. Customer wants something different. Customer usually want to have something else, but now they're not buying anymore. They are not buying as much as they had before. So your opportunity is to create new options. You are transacting new options with the customers. Some examples here, some software companies are taking this opportunity to give free license for a limited period of time to get as many customers as possible, giving them options to choose to buy later or not. A lot of airline companies are saying you can book the tickets and then you can, if it's canceled, you got vouchers to use within a year. Then you can decide whether to get money back or not, right? And the company's Dragonfly is a drone company and has been developing very advanced industrial drones. And during the Corona situation, they just found there's a need for having surveillance functions for the government or health authorities. They added some kind of new sensors, a temperature sensor, image sensor. They can fly around to see, is there any people who's having fever still walking around on the street? This is one of the new options provided to the customers. Rubedo System is a small company that is making a new products that is kind of a robotic device to do sanitizing in different places. They can be used in hospitals or schools, but it's just a joint combining in existing technologies. And then on the left top corner, we have the newcomers. These are the industry players. They used to be in different industry, but now they see the situation, then they can jump into the a different industry here. So for instance, Dyson make vacuum cleaner, but if you think about vacuum cleaner and then they are using the same technology to make a ventilator, a lot of distilleries, they make alcohol, but now they immediately change their production into making sanitizer. Mercedes-AMG, they have a technologies, they immediately use their technology to make a CPAP devices, and then they spend only 100 hours from the first times of conceptualization to the first time production, right? These are the examples of first a quick new coming into the existing market. And the bottom left is the reorganizer. A lot of companies have to reorganize their value chain to address the problem. And the bottom right are these companies or organizations who are not directly hit to their financial performance immediately, so they need to consolidate and keep investing. And these are a lot of universities are the good examples here. So these are 4 different types, and then this also requires different kind of capabilities. And then for the option maker, you need to look into creativity. For the newcomer, you need to pay attention to agility. For a reorganizer, you need to consider how to be resilient. And the consolidator need to strengthen your R&D, consolidate your alliances, also secure public and private funding. So these are the 4 different types of strategy the companies have. This is quite easy to understand. When you are going to help these challenge providers, the sponsoring companies, my suggestion is don't jump into solutions too quickly. You should ask 4 questions within your team, probably in a good dialogue with the sponsoring company, to say, hey, what is the immediate situation you think your company is positioned? Does it fit into any of the box what I mentioned before in framework? Or do they actually don't have any strategy, or actually they're taking multiple strategies? And then here you can, and then hold a second, take a breath, and ask the next 3 questions. What about the customer suppliers? The customers and suppliers, what strategies are they taking? And then the next question, what are the horizontal partners doing? And the same question for the competitors. The combination of question 2, 3, 4 together, if you have a sound understanding of that, you are being able to define the new normal of the industry after the COVID-19, which will probably have a long-lasting effect. Then you go back to revisit what kind of a strategy you are supposed to take. This is my short presentation here. Thank you.
go.
Thank you so much, Jason. That was
I-
super inspiring. So now we actually have 4 key questions for the students to take on into the virtual innovation sprint. We have time for a few questions now. I would like to ask, can you actually transfer this methodology to the universities? So now we're gonna hear different university representatives talk today, but how could we as a university also approach this change as an opportunity to do something new? And if so, what key question would you ask the university or the dean, Anders Bjerklev?
Yeah. Okay. At the first glance,
that's over to you, Jason.
Okay. At the first glance, I think the universities are at the bottom right corner. That's the consolidator. We are facing the changing demand of education, and we're also changing the industry collaboration. So I think this is the moment we're strengthening our industrial alliances, academic collaboration, and also try our best to seek public-private funding. But we can also think about, as I mentioned before, these 3 questions we're going to ask. Who are our customers? Our students, industry? What will be the fundamental change of our customers after the COVID-19? I know a lot of companies, a lot of teachers are changing the classes online, and some of them thinking this is the one-off thing, and the next semester is going to get back to normal. Industry wants some specific stuff. We are just helping them one-off time. It's not so the demand of a mask, for instance. What about designing some sustainable products and decomposable materials to produce new masks? How to collaborate with industry to do so. But don't take it as, you have to ask yourself, is that something, this kind of a change is just one-off change, or is actually long-term change? And assessing this is a critical step before we decide moving forward. I don't know if it's a clear answer, but this is just some of my thoughts here.
Thank you so much for that, Jason. One more question. Sorry, I just lost it there a little bit. It's been a long day. I have a question more for you, Jason. Lunch. Yeah. So I saw that you were very active during the COVID-19 lockdown in the debate going on. How important do you think it is that researchers are engaging in such an event and debate as we saw, and which is going on already?
Yeah, okay. I think for researchers within university, especially in any of the relevant engineering or technical domain, that can make a direct impact on, they should definitely take this opportunity. For instance, technology used for ventilator technology is used for making vaccines or testing method, etc. Unfortunately, I'm that kind of person. I don't have these kind of domain. I'm a professor in a management discipline. But even though I think you can still take the responsibility to disseminate some credible information to the society. So I would say researchers take this opportunity, especially, I think that a very effective way to do so is looking at relevant funding opportunities to apply new research projects that's addressing these grant challenges.
Thank you so much, Jason.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking the time to being with us. And we will continue now.
Yeah, thank you.
And first of all, before I introduce our next speaker in the studio, what we're going to see now is a lot of Danish universities joining us, but it's a global event, and all the information that we're having here, we would like to share with everyone as much as possible. Also try to be active in the chat as much as possible. directing your question to the speaker. So let's continue in the program. So now I'm super happy to welcome to Magaloon in the couch. Please join us here. It's super good to have friends within the room now. We've seen them on screen here. So welcome to you, Professor at the DTU Mechanical Engineering at the section for Production and Engineering Design. So super happy to have you here.
Nice to be here.
And you have 8 minutes. And
Great.
we'll let you know when you have 1 minute left. Yeah.
Better be quick. So it's really nice to be here, and thanks for the invite. I've been following this morning, and I've been extremely impressed. What I have for you in my small pitch is maybe a segue, a wake-up call, and some good news. So first, the segue. There's been many conversations this morning about the Sustainable Development Goals and what they actually are and what they mean for sustainability and reopening. So what I want to do is to take the segue from the circular economy goals to, the Sustainable Development Goals to circular economy. So basically, the good news is that on all sorts of international measurements, Denmark is #1 in the Sustainable Development Goals. So we can just sit back and relax, right? No. So here comes the wake-up call. There's one particular of the SDGs which we are actually doing pretty bad on. And that one is number 12, which is responsible consumption and production. And in fact, I think we should color it red. And the fact is that all of the world is doing pretty bad on number 12. We're simply not managing to decouple value creation from resource production and consumption. And that is basically the segue to circular economy, because circular economy is one way of trying to achieve that decoupling of us feeling great value and resource production and consumption. So the wake-up call continues. If we look at the industry in terms of any type of product, consumer products, let's take a telephone or the electronics industry. The World Economic Forum actually estimate that this is the largest growing waste stream in the world, both in terms of volume, but also in terms of wasted value. And in fact, you can see here from the figures, 44.7 million tons of waste are generated globally of e-waste. The good news is we're recycling 20% of those in a responsible manner. It means that we're not burning them on a field somewhere in a country somewhere, but 80% is not being recycled. But there's an enormous potential market-wise. Now, if this is an interactive session straight away, live interactive, I would ask how much of 1 ton of gold ore do you think you can get gold out of? But I'll give you the answers here. So from 1 ton of gold ore, which goes into our electronics, so we're all walking around with gold in our telephones, for example, we can get 5 grams out of 1 ton. Then if you look at how much can we get out of electronic waste, so we take the printed circuit boards inside our computers, our telephones and so forth, we get 575 grams. That's 115 times more gold out of electronic waste than out of ore. So if that's not a reason to look at circularity, I don't know what is. But you've also been talking about plastics this morning. So let's take that as a second example. Plastics waste. If we continue going on with plastics, producing the amount of plastics waste that we are producing today, by 2050, we'll have more plastics in the oceans than fish. That's not good enough either, right? We eat fish, and by the way, we're also eating plastic already, because we eat fish that eat plastic, and and it becomes concentrated in our bodies. In fact, there's one scientist who actually has measured 29 out of 35 hazardous substances in her own bloodstream through plastic waste, among other things. So again, the nice thing is that we have focus on this. The Innovation Foundation here in Denmark, together with McKinsey, have done a nice report called the New Plastics Economy, which is actually sponsoring research projects which are going on just now, just starting up just now. So there's the opportunity. And then there were some questions this morning about what is circular economy. So there's many different pictures of the circular economy, and the butterfly diagram is often used. I'm going to show the first half of the butterfly diagram as Philips Electronics actually draw it from themselves. It's the technical cycle with a number of cycles. But first, what is circularity and what's its opposite? Its opposite is linearity. So the world we've been living in the last many, many decades is this linear take, make, use, dispose, or waste. And circularity is basically trying to close these cycles. So the examples I just showed you of the gold and the plastics, they fit on the recycle or parts harvesting of this part of the cycle. But there's also another part, which is the or the other half of the butterfly, which is the biocycle, which is all sorts of biological science and learning from nature in the technocycle. Again, McKinsey and now the Ellen MacArthur Foundation see that there's 1.8 trillion euros per year potential in shifting to a circular economy. But it's not all about recycling. It's also about different ways of decoupling our value creation from resource consumption. What I want to show you now is the ways in which we can actually start to look at that. We've had a research project going over the last 3 years called Match. And basically what we started to look at was to say, how can we help companies to look at their business processes, look at the way in which they do their products and service innovation, their production and their value chain, all the way through the life cycle, which you see on coming up on the screen now, but also the way in which they organize the company. The companies reorganize themselves for circularity, to be able to take things back, to be able to revalorize, to be able to not produce them in the first instance, and maybe even make services, which was also talked about this morning. And also to look at what are the market and policy drivers and barriers that are out there. So this is the project we've been doing. What we did was to make a tool, and you give something, you get something. And this is basically for companies, all different sizes of companies. We have 174 companies who we've tried this on so far. The tool they get is a self-assessment tool. They can go in and look at how ready they are in these 8 dimensions. They see their strengths and their opportunities. The strengths in this example are green and the opportunities are gray, which means where they're not very ready. They can get a readiness profile. They can benchmark themselves between different business units, but also across different companies, anonymously, but within the same branch. And then they can get some help to transition through tools. And what we've got out of that is to anonymously measure the readiness of not just the Danish, but the society, the industry society that has been willing to take part in this project. 174 companies, as I said, and we can get the data. And I'm going to show you for the first time ever, actually, how well it's going out there from these companies. So these are self-proclaimed interested in the circular economy. 174 of them, 540 people. These are in the relevant sphere of people we're measuring. So the best areas are through, and I can't see it because it went off the screen. If you could put it down, thank you. Yeah, service support, technology to monitor products, and then strategy. So IoT and digitalization is really big. And a lot of companies are focusing on that. The second place is companies designing and developing products for circularity, and also reorganizing themselves, not quite as ready within the industry sector there. And the lousy last place is to look at new opportunities in the value chain, looking at take-back systems for our products, considering the market opportunities, and very few of them looking at the policy implications or understanding the policy implications. This project, by the way, we're doing together with the Danish EPA, and they're extremely interested in seeing what the barriers are. So we'll be doing a workshop together with them as well. Now, the good news, which is the giveaways, which I'm going to close on now, is we've trialed on this Match project, but also another Nordic project with over 70 companies. We've been creating methods and tools over the last 3.5 years, and they're all freely available now for you delegates in this project, in this program. It's very easy to access them. We've had a number of workshops also in here in the Skylab, but also in the companies on the right-hand side here. And we have many different companies and consultants and think tanks and agencies, members of these trials. So that we think they're pretty well tried and tested. What we have here is a list of, or a collection of over 90 tools on the Match website. And if you go onto the Match website, you just simply need to log in to get access to them. So you give your feedback, and what you get is access to these tools. And on the Circuit website, we also have many tools there, but also 6 workbooks, which can help all the way from the business creation through to the product development and the take back. So that's hopefully a nice resource for you on this program here, fully available. And do write to us if you need any help in coaching with those. We have a couple of events over the autumn as well. That's how we're, from our university side, doing an action research-based project, both helping with tools and techniques, but also actually gathering the data and seeing where do we actually need more research and more help in collaboration with the agencies. That was it. And I think on the last slide, you may see some links to the websites, but of course, you're going to get these later.
Perfect. We can also add it in the chat, and
Yeah.
you'll get it later.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That was super inspiring. Very consolidated. Yeah. We have time for one question.
Yeah.
Do you have time?
I do.
Super. So you've been in contact with a lot of different companies. So you mentioned 174 in the CE assessment. When you've been in dialogue with them, Is there any general eye-opener that they see when they get the assessment?
Yeah.
So one thing is the number, but the experience they get out of getting the picture.
Yeah, and I'm glad you asked that question,
Surprised
Christine,
about-
because that's really important. The number is just a number, right?
Yeah.
That's for us, the stats.
Yeah.
For them, it's the possibility to open their eyes and to go into dialogue. Some of these companies, and the match tool basically is, the idea is that you can invite colleagues to go in, and the more from the same company that are actually doing their assessment, the more trustworthy the data are. So some companies have actually used this as a vehicle to actually start to reorganize.
Yeah.
And they were really surprised that when you get the CEO and all the C-level of the organization in the room, they said, yeah, it's going great. We're doing really fine.
Yeah.
And then you ask the guys on the shop floor and the product development and the supply chain management group, and they start to answer, they get a very raw picture of,
Yeah.
oh, actually, we're not that ready at all. And there is quite a standard deviation
And there you need the numbers
spread.
again.
And there you need the numbers. But then we can help and say, how do we do that? And that's the last part of the help that we give to some of those companies, is to take them through a process where the gap is big or the readiness is low, to see how we can improve that.
Yeah.
And they've seen as being a very nice way for them to get their eyes on where they need to focus. And then after that, the tools that we've been developing are useful for them, of course, to try. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So that was the first speaker from DTU.
Good luck with the project.
Thank you so much, Tim.
You're welcome.
And we'll share the slides with you. So that was it for the guest on our couch. And we will go to the next speaker. So thank you very much. And we'll see each other again soon. I will just turn this one and yeah, so all the links. So what you saw here is really a big toolbox that you can access. You just need to give away your email and you have a bunch of different tools that you can apply, plug and play right now. So that was a good opening from the universities. So now the next speaker in the studio, streamed in live, is Michael Hauschel from environmental engineering, from the section for quantitative sustainability assessment. So you also have 8 minutes, Michael, so I hope you're with us, and we'll let you know when you have 1 minute left.
I am indeed with you. Can you hear me? I need to know if you can hear me, and you can see my screen with my presentation. Okay, that's super. So thank you very much for having me here. It's very interesting and very important activity, for sure. I mean, we need definitely for sustainable development really to shift the focus towards circular economy and sustainability more broadly, to have a chance of meeting the climate targets, but also of achieving the sustainable development that's specified by the Sustainable Development Goals. But I'll still like to take perhaps a little bit sobering perspective here. So really looking into circular economy and say, well, you know, we need to get beyond just the hype and see, is it actually more sustainable, and when is it more sustainable? What do we need to look at to make sure that we make something that's better and not just different? So I'll skip this slide quite quickly because Tim actually introduced it. We didn't manage to coordinate this before. This is the Ellen MacArthur Foundation's version of the butterfly diagram. But Tim made the point that there are these different strategies that we have for closing the loop. We have the product life cycle going vertically here from the top to the bottom, the different stages of the life cycle. And the circular economy is really about closing loops instead of having these linear product lives, to have them much more circular, preferably closing the loops close to the user. So maintaining the product in use, servicing it and so forth. If that's not possible, harvest parts of it, remanufacture it, refurbish it. If that's not possible, recycling it. Unfortunately, as I think Tim also mentioned, that's a fact that circular economy so far has been very strongly focused on the last part of these, so the circle that is furthest away from the user, where we just recycle the materials. And there are some thoughts there to consider of thermodynamic nature, if this is a strategy, and even for the other circling. Closing loops is a good thing because it saves production of new products, it saves materials, it saves resources, but it also costs energy, for collecting the stuff, for processing it, cleaning it, and making it ready for a new use. So if we take a graph here where we have, in this case, energy on the y-axis and the percentage of a material that we are recycling, or a product for that matter, along the x-axis, we'll see that the more we recycle, the more we save. So there's a direct proportionality here. For every ton of gold we manage to recycle, we save the energy associated with producing a new ton of gold. On the other hand, there's also a cost. As I said, it costs something to collect it, it costs something to process it, and that depends, of course, on how it is. It's much easier to recycle steel, aluminium from engine blocks than to recycle aluminium from a thin foil that has been used in food packaging or in a juice container. So we have some types of products where it's very cheap, it's very easy to do, and the lost energy is not very much. But as we move further and towards 100% recycling, which we can thermodynamically never reach, but we can move in that direction, we see that the cost in terms of lost energy increases dramatically. And of course, what's interesting is really the net energy here. So when we sum these two curves, we find that there is a point where we actually start losing energy by recycling. And that's, of course, not meaningful. It could be meaningful if we have a scarce resource, or if we have some serious environmental problems associated with producing the new resource, but you could make exactly the same type of graph for different types of environmental impacts. So this is energy is closely related generally to climate change, but you could do it also for pollution with toxics, other substances, loss of non-renewable materials, or in the end, loss of biodiversity even. So this is important to keep this kind of perspective in mind. So the question is it really more sustainable? If you want to determine if your solution is actually more sustainable, what you would like it to replace, then you need to reveal this kind of problem shifting and trade-offs. So you need to look at the whole life cycle of your solution from the cradle to the grave. It may be that your solution is beneficial in some parts, but the alternative that it replaces is beneficial in other parts. So you solve some problems in one location of the life cycle, but inadvertently create problems in another part. And in your comparison here, you need to look at the whole life cycle. And you also need to look at all the potential impacts that it can have. So there's a lot of focus on climate change now, of course, but there are many other types of environmental impact. And there's also social impact. So we have the total range of sustainable development goals, where many of them are societal or related to our prosperity. And you need to consider all of these and to make sure that you have not overlooked something if you want to go out and say it's actually more sustainable. And we're, of course, as a university, training our students in this. The second graph with the SDG assessment along the life cycle of the product is taken from a manual that we're teaching bachelor students at DTU. All bachelor students get through this from starting last year in the Science Philosophy for Engineers course, Ingeniørfagsvidenskabsteori. So this is very important. Another thing is, of course, also whether it is sustainable in absolute terms. So one thing is if it's more sustainable than what it's replacing, but is it actually good enough? Is it something that delivers whatever it's supposed to deliver within the space that we can give for it? Olivier, in his first presentation, was talking about these absolute boundaries that we need to respect for climate change. We need to have zero carbon footprint of our societies in 2050. We need to reduce current levels by around 50% globally in 2030 already. So what does that mean? How much can we actually allow the technology to clean? So what's important is here to have this absolute perspective as well. So we're not just, refining, polishing a little bit on something that eventually we shouldn't do in the first place. My last point here is about stocks and flows. If we take the example of steel, Western societies have in-use stocks in buildings, mainly in cars, what have you, in our society of more than 10 tons of steel per capita. For each of us, more than 10 tons of steel. The flow into this is somewhere a bit above 0.2 tons of steel, so 240 kilos or so per capita. And since this is a steady state situation, we are stable around these plus 10 tons, we lose a similar amount from our stocks. And this is where circular economy is focused. So focus is very much here on making it more efficient. Actually, for steel, we're already quite efficient. We're recycling, I don't know, more than 80%, 85%. But of course, we should aim to be more efficient if it's meaningful, as I said in the beginning. But I think what's really interesting is what can we do about the stock? And this is where some of the other strategies, circling closer, if you like, to the user, come into play here. So I think it's very important to look at that. I mean, the load of products and materials that we are building in our societies, that is really a very important source of environmental impact, of non-sustainability. And when we're talking circular economy, we need to see it in this perspective. And that concludes my talk.
I'm valid.
So I should end the sharing, or what? You can do that for me.
Thank you very much, Michael. It's impressive also to invite a number of researchers to basically pitch a big part of the research and activities they're doing here. I know that that's not an easy task, but it's really great to see how it's working. The way that we have set up this session is that those of you that are joining virtually, we will do a collective Q&A session after the university presentations. So for those of you joining virtually, if you have any questions to the presenters, we please invite you to be active on the chat. The easy way to navigate your questions would be if you put the name, just the first name of the presenters in the beginning of your question, because then we know who to direct it to afterwards. Michael, what has been really inspiring also with your presentation is that you're working on giving the students and the young researchers both a holistic and critical approach on how we work with sustainability that can also be a very broad perspective, and sometimes we're using it without actually having a critical understanding of it. So speaking of having a holistic approach to sustainability, I'm really honored and excited to invite our next speaker, which is not from DTU, but from Aalborg University. And this is Professor Kirsten Hansen, that is having a quite different research practice and area. So I hope for you listening in that you're going to get a number of different perspectives on sustainability, and hopefully some of these models will be interesting for you that are joining the innovation sprint and bringing these perspectives and toolkits into the actual acceleration of your projects. So Kirsten, I hope you're with us, and the screen is yours. You have 8 minutes for your presentation, and when there's 1 minute left, we'll just have a small little sound from a bell giving you an identification on having 1 minute left. But Kirsten, welcome on board.
Thank you. I hope you can see me and my screen. Does it look right from you, and do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you and we can see you.
That's fine, thank you. I'm Kirsten Hansen. I'm professor at Aalborg University, as you just said, and I would like to talk about efficient technologies or end-user behavior, which is the most important or the more important in a circular economy. So I take a slightly different approach, but I start the same place as I think many of the other presentations have done, that we need new relations between consumption and production. We are going away from the linear production, distribution, consumption system, and we need to go into something which is circular, which means that resources...
Then just let us know if you're putting them on. Right now we can see you on the screen.
Ah, so I didn't... I have my presentation on, so you don't see that.
So
share screen.
Yeah, I had share. I did share screen. We try again. Somehow it's not working. And you still don't see anything but my face?
We see you and hear you, yes, but not your slides.
That's a pity. It's very good slides.
The anticipation.
Yeah. share screen. Try again.
There we go.
There you go. That was good.
So put it in presenter mode.
Yeah. Does it work now?
Yes.
Yes, that's great. So just continuing from where I was, we are going into a circular economy, and I would like to talk mainly about energy consumption, which is a special case, but I think a lot of it can be interesting from other points as well. And in the energy system, you could say the circular economy is slightly different because it's more something that is network-based. We will see in a future renewable system that production and consumption happens anywhere. So we are in a system where we have production and consumption mixed together, rather than the old system where we had big power plants, distribution, and then the end users just being passively. So what I show on this slide, now you see the slides, is that we will have in the future renewable system fluctuating production and rhythmic consumption. So in this figure, in the light green, you see on some weeks of January, some years ago in February, you see the production that follows wind and sun. We see sometimes there's a lot of production and other times there's very little. And then we have the dark green part of the figure showing the societal rhythm. This is a weekend, this is a weekend, then we have 5 weekdays, and then we have the weekend again. So we have peaks every morning and every evening, and we need to deliver energy in these peaks, or we need to remove these peaks so we can have the production and the consumption of energy to match each other. And this means that the future energy system will have new roles for consumers in this reconfigured energy system. We have talked about consuming less energy for many years, and we will continue to have consumers to reduce consumption. You could say we need reduce-humors to be a big fancy, but we also need consumers to deliver flexibility to energy networks, so postponing or reducing peak consumptions. If we can have people to consume less in the peaks, then that is much more important than reducing overall consumption. So we also need consumers to be flex-humors who can reduce in peaks and postpone their peaks. And then the last role for the consumer is to be a prosumer. That means starting to produce energy themselves by PVs on the roof or by other types of local energy consumption production systems. So I will talk shortly about these 3 roles for the consumers. And first is about reducing consumption. We have had efficient technologies on the market for many decades now, but there are problems on this efficiency as well. This figure is based on more than 200,000 households, detached houses in Denmark, and we see all the A-labeled houses, they have in theory very low consumption, whereas the G-labeled houses in theory have very high consumption. This is the dark green columns. But if we look at the actual consumption, then we see that in reality, people living in old inefficient houses, they don't use as much as the theory would expect them to do. Whereas people living in the new low energy houses, they actually use more than the theory would expect. So how can we understand this? Well, this is about behavior or change in behavior, because people in the theoretical calculations, we expect people to behave completely identical in these different buildings, but people don't do that. If you live in an old inefficient house, you don't heat all of it in the coldest winters to 20 degrees. You put on a sweater, you only keep the rooms hot which you are actually using. Whereas in the low energy houses, which are actually difficult to keep at a very low temperature, it's much easier for them to be 22 or 23 degrees. And people, they like that, so they take off the sweater, they walk barefooted in the winter time and have higher temperatures. And this means that the technology, the efficiency of the home is actually influencing the way we are using the houses and the technologies. So the other... Siger du? Du har nu tilbage. The other role is flexhumors. We need the consumers to be flexible, and we know that buildings can provide flexibility of some hours by preheating, but should the utilities or the households control it? Well, our research shows that we need smart home technology to be included in this, but we need these technologies to be developed so both consumers and utilities are involved in using and developing the smart solutions. Finally, the prosumers producing own electricity. What does it make for a difference if people produce their own electricity? Well, we see from our research that it actually do make quite a difference for people if they have PVs on their roof. Most PV owners, they start to adjust their own electricity consumption so it matches to its production, which means they put on their washing machines and their dishwashers when the sun is shining because they prefer to use their own electricity. And also a majority of PV owners, they state that they're much more interested in energy after obtaining PVs. So this is also an example how the technology is affecting how people are consuming in their everyday life. So what to learn for your technology development from these kind of research projects? Well, first of all, sustainable transitions, they need new technology, but it also need active users. And new technology should be developed with an understanding for how it will be used. So we need to know more about how the users will in real life use these technologies. And this also includes that we should understand that when users, they take new technologies into use, then they also change their practices. So the new technologies should make it easy and they should encourage to consume less, not encourage to consume more. So it should not be that the new technologies somehow make us not think about how much we consume, because that often ends up that we are actually consuming more. So that's it. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Kirsten. Truly inspiring, the interlink between technologies and user behaviors, but also the complexity associated to it. I can highlight that during the innovation sprint, we will also challenge and guide you to include the users along the development process, both to bring a voice into the solutions you're going to develop, but also to continuously test and challenge the assumptions that you're having, because it's a really important point. It's great to see activity on the chat. If you have questions for Kirsten, put her name first in your question, and then we'll take a few of the questions once we had all the presentations here virtually. But thank you very much, Kirsten Hansen. Next up, we have from another university, Roskilde University, that's based southern part of or south of Copenhagen. We have Jesper Holm, Associate Professor. So I hope you're with us, Jesper. We are really looking forward to your presentation. So the screen is yours, and we will get you feedback in case there is any problems with the sound and the slides. But welcome to you, Jesper.
Thank you very much. Well, yes, I'm a lecturer at Roskilde University in environmental transition. I'm giving focus on the role of environment and health policies on the transition. And I'm not going to do a presentation on any slides, whatever. So I'll try to do it orally, and I have to look at my paper because I have to stick to 8 minutes. But so you might look at the pictures behind me in my private home. We don't have any private problems on that here. So I work with companies, municipalities, and social institutions, and change agents, and encouraging students to do the same during their times at the university. I'm currently involved together with people from DTU on co-conference together with companies and municipalities. Exactly the same type of travel that you are inviting us in this program. So my area of research covers sustainable housing, as Kirsten does, tourism, and social inclusion for disabled, besides local climate change mitigation in Denmark. So you've been introduced so far on circular economy. What is that about? What is the role of companies and universities in companies? What is readiness assessment? But also life cycle methods and approaches to identify the role of us as consumers. This is embedding technology in everyday life, you could say sociological understanding of what goes on, as Kirsten just have presented. This is very beautiful, and I will build on top of this and taking another kind of angle into it. I tend to stick to interventions for circular economy that leave the choice and moral pressure burden on individuals out of sight. This is my effort. It doesn't always succeed. I fear this burden on us as consumers or individuals might be overloading us, and we cannot by choice make a difference. We have to deliver systemic changes, and we have to, of course, back this up. So this is my approach. So I'm combining technological interventions and innovations with politics, and how do they correlate? So how on earth may university and you as a student then make a difference here? I will try to encourage you to take an approach crisscrossing producer-user relations and resource areas or a spatial orientation, because as universities, we have the freedom and we have the option, well, even the duty to cross barriers such as sector compartmentalization or knowledge boxes or habits, path dependencies. This is the problem we are facing every time. I've been into this business and for like 30 years, and there are so many hindrances and barriers, and there's been so many innovative approaches like circular economy, cradle to cradle, life cycle system analysis, ecological modernization, environmental innovation, all these kind of things. It's beautiful. This is, leaving focus on the bads and let's focus on the positive options. This is also my business. Now, doing so, we might identify options for circular economy transition by taking a departure in business product user regimes. Like Kirsten mentioned, heating in housing and all what is in the chain behind that, or like farming, food eating, or cotton processing, clothes using. So taking approaches like this from transition theory, from a Dutch-Belgian culture, I've learned that as researchers and students, we may offer a multi-level approach that the actors themselves have heard the hard times to establish. So we might be the ones who might combine the difficult approaches seen from companies or consumers or local authorities. It might be smart, it has to be smart, of course, that you have your own interest involved into it. So where do you find yourself as a student? Here I want to make a change. Am I really engaged in food stuff or mobility or housing, whatever? This might seem very obvious, but very often we become alienated to what we engage in, and suddenly we are stuck in the hell of issues that don't really interest us. So in my own research, I've taken a turn into these positive alternatives. Where are the window of opportunities? Where can we find change agents? What's the role of policies? And where can we deliver technical or socio-technical solutions together with people involved? What might we learn then from success stories of radical innovations, radical changes that we've seen worldwide? This is a review study. Instead of inventing everything from the start, where have we seen radical changes going on and what to learn from that? And in this, I'm making, together with colleagues, of course, sustainable interventions in companies or in trades, institutions, and local areas, or efforts to do so. I'm not an engineer, so I won't give you any toolboxes of how to be smart on that. I'm sort of like a more social, technical, cross-disciplinary trained person. So the point of departure I'd seen students and researchers at universities having some successes with is to work with where in the socio-technical systems of food, agriculture, mobility, clothing, housing, are the big improvements to gain towards a circular economy, radical changes, sustainability, and where are the main hindrances or blockings. Either to have a look at a regime level or a niche level. This is transition theory informed. By the regime, we talk about the rules and regulations, but also the standards, technical standards covering mobility, covering tourism, covering clothing. So this broad level where trades fit in and consumer practices fit in and stabilizes, creates path dependency or a certain fixed type of way of doing things. Are there any change agents in the regimes? Are there, for instance, concrete circulation groups which are on the market? Are there anyone we can identify struggling to find a niche or struggling to find a way to give a pressure towards the regime? And might we as students or researchers join in with these and try to unsolve the barriers and try to engage and put a pressure on the whole regime? This is dependent on that it's quite advanced groups in technical innovations. And if not, we have to look at niches. This is the level where new intruders, new small companies or partners for change are doing experimentation on renewable energies or sustainable tourism or whatever. And here I found many students being very easy on and comfortable, feeling comfortable in joining in with people of change agents who want to create a niche. And as you as technical students or whatever might have a great say in coming with your knowledge and bringing it with energy.
Half a minute left.
So, where I have found that some of these efforts actually really have made a change is in tourism. I've joined students who now have made their own companies in ecotourism, but also on local change or local climate change mitigation together with municipalities in making seminars with change agents there where there can be radical changes, but also social services for disabled on inclusion. So very different areas, but same type of approaches. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jesper. That was a fantastic pitch on time. We will await with the questions for the end. Please keep the chat active in terms of your questions to Jesper. I think one of the interesting elements was was also the multidisciplinary approach and thinking around the solutions that are needed. Normally here at Skylab, we would be gathering students across disciplines from different universities, trying to bring this holistic approach to the solutions. This time in the Virtual Innovation Sprint, we hope that you're going to connect globally with the different approaches and skills and disciplines to really think out of the box, but also ambitious in terms of how can you use your expertise to address a given challenge, maybe looking at some of the challenge descriptions we had here. If we talk about sustainability, one element is the social dimension. Another element that we also have touched upon throughout the presentations is, of course, the environmental dimension. So we're extremely happy now to have in the studio from DTU and DTU Environment, Thomas Astrup, which is the head of section at DTU Environment. So we're really looking forward to hear your presentation, and it's just great to have you here sitting in the couch with us. So the word is yours. Yeah, welcome.
I think it's a fantastic initiative that you have been doing, and it's really good. I'm looking forward to be here also and to try to put well, a slightly different perspective to what we have heard so far. But also a perspective that somehow is underlying the discussion before, which is the resource perspective. And in my mind, resources are important to remember when we talk about circular economy, circular solutions, because this is in a way what drives the circular solution and what should be in place. So with this little talk here, I would like to put some words on the challenges and also some perspective on the way we should look at this when making the right solutions, basically. What we have seen probably mainly loads of these different kinds of circular diagrams indicating circular solutions and circular economy and so forth. And as we heard today, also there are a lot of, let's say, challenges and things we should consider in each of these phases, like the design, the manufacturing, distribution, and so forth. What I would like to come to is sort of the, in a way, quote unquote, the end of the circle, like before closing the loop, which is turning the waste materials into new raw materials. Behind all this, there's some basic principles or drivers in a way, which is the access to resources, access to raw materials. And of course, in order to maintain that, based on this, we need to have innovation, new business opportunities and solutions and so forth. But we also want, from all this, we also want to harvest the environmental benefits, the sustainability aspects, energy, green energy, as we have heard today here. So again, from a resource perspective and also my personal perspective, it is sort of the end of the circle, that the waste angle that is really also difficult. The others were also difficult, but this is really difficult, and without that, we have no circle. So let's take a closer look at that. This is another circle that we have here. We all have circles, but let's just start from the beginning. Basically, we generate some waste. To do this, we need to understand what actually we have. What is the kind of materials we put down in the waste bin, and or how do we collect it? That's another thing. Is it just in the general waste, or is it a special system, reverse logistics? We can call them many things, right? But how do we do that? How does that affect the properties of the materials? How good are they to recycle? How can we upgrade them? These things we have to think about. So one suggestion is, when we start making the solutions, this is try to outline this circle here with our solution. Basically, we can make three things. We can make energy out of our products, our waste. We can make nutrients. We can make materials, or something that leads to materials properties. And we can, of course, make new products out of that, and a wide variety of those. But that's the basic thing, essentially. So we need to understand, how should we prioritize those three different outcomes of the waste, and what kind of products do we turn those into? And most importantly, we need to consider, what do we actually substitute of normal virgin production? Because if we don't substitute anything, if we're just creating new demand or new consumption, we simply do not have any effect, any gains, any benefits out of this. And those benefits in the substitution part there, we have to balance those with the impacts that are associated with all those activities that we are doing. Because the whole recycling, the whole logistics, this is a burden to the environment in itself. So without any benefits downstream, we have no overall benefit. Of course, we have to close the circle also and think about our new products. How do they enter a new circle? Because honestly, most of what we have done so far today, it is only one circle we're actually thinking about, and not the next and the next. So we have some challenges there. Let's just move on and make this a slightly more concrete, perhaps, that when we start thinking about the solution, we have to bring it down in each process step that we put our materials and waste through. We need, again, to think about what we offset, what we substitute. But we also have to realize that these circular solutions, they're not like single lined or isolated. They are affecting a lot of other things indirectly, and we need to factor that into account as well. Otherwise, we're forgetting a lot of stuff that may also have impacts, that may actually make things worse or have effects in other parts of our system. And we also have, and this is something that we often forget, we have to consider, what did our waste or materials, what happened to those today? Because nothing disappears, nothing just evaporates or vanish. So maybe something useful was made out of that, actually. So if we do something different, if we make a new take-back solution, we didn't do, or we will not do what we did yesterday. So that has to be accounted also. Just a little example again with plastic, which is something we often talk about, and for good reason, because this is a super nice material, but it's a super difficult material also from a recycling perspective. And what we have is what we have on the left there. We have a lot of different plastic products. We have labels on them. We have printing. We have different colors and so forth. And essentially what we would like to have is something like this, some nice pellets, some nice colors or white or whatever that can be used in our manufacturing. So we need to understand not only how we take it back, how we deal with the products when they are products, but also the process steps that we put this through. How do we actually separate? How do we wash out the labels that we don't need and the printing and so forth? So there are many things we need to remove to have something nice and clean. And this is another thing that we often forget, that waste, this is not clean as it is. And we want to get it back into manufacturing clean. So there are many things like the properties of these materials, contaminants, additives in case of plastic, the rejects from these processes, what happens with that? Maybe there are some wastewater, maybe there are some emissions in other way. We have to address those also. And these are, again, things that we often forget. What we do basically at DTU and also other places is when we address whether something is sustainable, when we quantify the environmental loads, which is what we do at our section, basically, is we put all this process chain or value chain or chain of events or circle, if you want, into our models, basically. And we have developed some of those at DTU. This is an example where we can, all the boxes you see, is basically each of those process steps. And for all that, we can, through that, we follow the materials, the waste, we follow the properties, we follow the chemical components until they end out, let's say, new products or in the environment. So we keep track of what happens. And if there's a impact somewhere, we can go back and say, okay, it actually came from this here. So maybe you could design your product a little bit better because this is actually a problem for us. So each of those boxes, we put environment on that, and then we add it up, and then we can see, is this a sustainable solution from an environmental perspective? We can put economy on also. And that's the way to compare different solutions. And that has to be better than what we do today. And if we are good today, we have to be even better when we make new solutions. So it's not just enough to think, this sounds nice, this sounds circular, we have to do it better. And for that, we have to also do a bit of calculation, be consistent with it. Now, these models here, they are doing that properly, in depth. This is complicated, time consuming. This is what we do here and we research into. Of course, you cannot do that every time. You cannot do this in this line of or this initiative either. But you can start with a piece of paper, a blank piece of paper, and try to draw these boxes, try to consider the events and think about what kind of activities is needed, what happens with rejects, what happens with all kind of flows. And once you have done that, basically, then you have done a very good starting point. And then the next step would be to either write us an email or pick up the phone and then take it to the next level and make sure that from the company perspective, that the investment you put into this here, let's say also investment in terms of brand, that this is actually have a solid basis, it's robust, and you can be pretty sure also with the development in society in the future that this is a robust choice and investment, and you actually have a good circular solution. That was what I have. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Thomas. In this event, and the participants can choose to collaborate with a congress, a membership organization, and a number of industries that wants to move towards a circular practice, but also approach. In DTU environment, who are you collaborating with there, and what do you see as a role to move it outside of the university and actually be part of creating this change?
We're actually collaborating a lot with the industry from different perspectives. It can be, let's say, companies or also public authorities, but also public companies handling waste. This is sort of one, okay, what should they do? They want to provide these materials back as raw materials. So making the solutions there, but also with industry manufacturing companies, like we have a problem with our product becoming waste at some point. How can we make sure that this is actually the right when we change design or we change our approaches? So I would say it's all across. It's both at we both focus at very specific individual processes like technologies. When, let's say, D2 or other universities develop those technologies in the lab or in pilot scale or in full industrial scale, as well as when companies do that. But it also is at a very high level planning perspective from municipalities or national governmental agencies. How should they design their system? Can
I add a small reflection?
Absolutely.
We're on time, so let's have another question. You joined us in the couch, so you're here. I also see a theme. So there's clean air, clean water, clean cities, and now you mentioned clean manufacturing. So there's something about the quality in the materials when we reuse it. So we have Linear Group, and then we have Novo Nordisk. So they're working with waste, and their challenges is just about that. So if you should recommend them or the students, what should they do for very first step going about understanding the challenge and then assessing a first step towards a solution?
I mean, there are a lot of brilliant ideas about how we can use waste materials for new purposes. Lena is one example. One of the things that I would suggest we think about or don't forget is the chemistry in these materials. There are, unfortunately, a lot of stuff we add to our products today that we actually don't want back. So we have to do something, or we have to pick our materials carefully. This is one thing that is often forgotten. Another thing is like I illustrated that try to plan the whole or illustrate the whole process of processing of the materials before it becomes a new part of a building or a new product. And then also think about how should that be taken down and back again, right?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Thomas. Yes, Linda?
Yes, let's bring it.
You have talked about recycling plastic, and it's very detailed, looking into recycling one-time plastic. When we use those plastics, which is anyway going to be banned in many countries in the future, would it make much sense to actually look into these one-time plastic recycling?
I think plastic is a material that we cannot avoid, even though these single-use plastic products are banned. Honestly, this is just a small part of the full plastic consumption. So I think we have plenty of plastic products to deal with in the future also. And unfortunately, some of the alternatives, they're not even more sustainable either. So just making it into a bioproduct doesn't guarantee that it's good either.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas, for joining us. That was a true inspiration. And again, we will be sharing your slides on the website for any of the participants and students. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
All right. Last but not least, in our long row of university presentations, we are now having a presentation with a bit more of a economical perspective, also being in the focus on sustainability. So we have with us from Copenhagen University, Associate Professor Christiana Parisi, as the final presentation, and then we'll have a bit of time afterwards to take some of the questions from the virtual speakers and the participants as well. So Christiana, I hope you're with us. The time is yours now. You have 8 minutes, and when there's 1 minute left, we'll just let you know by the sound of a bell. So we're looking forward to your presentation. Christiana, the screen is yours.
Perfect. Can you see me? Oh, yes, I can see that. So good afternoon, everyone. Let me share my screen. So I hope you can see that. It is. So I'm actually an associate professor from Copenhagen Business School, and my background is in accounting and social and environmental accounting, actually. So my expertise is in management control. How do you measure, how do you assess sustainability in general, but circular economy in particular, and actually how do you measure the impact, the social impact in particular of that. Today, what I would like to discuss with you is more on a practical level. How can we measure urban circular economy? This is based on a project that I'm currently leading. I am project coordinator of a large Horizon 2020 project that started in June 2019 and will end in 2 years. That focuses, its name is Reflow, and its focus is on implementing and circular economy within cities and actually supporting cities to the transition toward a circular and regenerative state. And this is what the cities that we're working with are both large cities. We have European capital like Amsterdam, Berlin, Milan, Paris, and smaller cities like Cluj-Napoca in Romania and Vejle here in Denmark. So what I would like to discuss with you is actually some of the points that I think are relevant. I bring yet another field of research in the discussion, which is accounting, and I take the perspective from more of a meso level instead of a micro level as usually done within research. And I will start from a question that may seem banal in many ways, of what is circular economy, but it's actually more complex than it seems, as we have seen today throughout the challenges and also throughout the presentation of my colleagues who did before. Circular economy has been the subject of many conceptualization. We have seen the Ellen MacArthur Foundation in 2019. They also issue a report on circular cities, but they focus more on singular elements. So, for example, how artificial intelligence supports circular cities, how are the other elements doing. However, even if circular economy is growing as a business construct, there's still very little research based on that. And there is also, and research is usually divided into small elements. So what are the implications of performance management, for example, what are the implications of technology? But there is a lack of research of how we can actually implement circular economy from a broader perspective, taking into account also elements, building blocks, you may say, that may be considered as trade-offs. For example, having a positive environmental result doesn't always mean having a positive economic result of your actions and so on. And in my research, when I was preparing the project, I was also, I must say, even more confused by the European Commission, who has a view on circular economy that is very broad. If you see, I just decided to copy paste part of the report towards a circular economy zero waste program for Europe from December 2014. But even the circular economy action plan that was issued in March this year is along the same lines. If you read what the European Commission understands as circular economy, you will see that it's focused on boosting recycling, preventing loss of valuable materials, in creating jobs, economic growth, creating new business model, eco-design, industrial symbiosis, zero waste, reduce greenhouse emission, measuring impact, and so on and so forth. It is hard to find something that does not fall under this definition. So what I did in the project, in my Horizon 2020 project, was actually trying to find and to define the building blocks and test how they can work together in order to support the transition towards circular economy. And the model that you see in this slide is actually based on the reflow vision of circular economy that we started with and that we are now implementing in our cities. You can find this in our deliverable that is online. I will give you all the tools afterwards. So the basic is actually the social value. We have a so-called human-centered approach, meaning that we would like to have, in our view, the citizen involved in choosing what the main element of circular economy, what the focus of circular economy should be, how it impacts them. And then based on that, what are the building blocks that we focused on? The first one is, as you can read in the green part of the slides, the green circle, those are our building blocks. The business and society focuses on measurement, especially measurement of the social impact of the activities that are undertaken. And as you know, social impact can be also translated in economic impact within the cities as well. The creation of new business models that actually try to overcome the trade-off between a sustainable circular approach and an economic return for cities themselves. Then we have technology, we have partners in our partnership that are focused on a distributed ledger technology. So they are creating and adapting blockchain technology to link the various actors in the value chain, thus supporting the exchange of information. The third building block is the material engineering, meaning on the one hand, the implementation of an MFA technology, which is a material flow analysis that tracks how the materials are actually distributed within cities and how we can implement that to improve the environmental impact, but also to start creating a material library where the cities can actually create new materials based also on the materials that they have available in the cities that they work, in the landscape where they work. The fourth building block for us is governance and urban planning, meaning that any prescriptive framework for circular economy is actually incomplete at urban level if we don't take into account which are the existing governance structure, what is the legislative environment where the cities operate, and actually can constitute a challenge as well as an opportunity for our cities. And then the two final building blocks are capacity building in order to create an awareness and also to form the participants in order to be for them to be able to properly implement circular economy and actually be proactive in creating new opportunities for circular economy. This goes from the general public to practitioners to university students and researchers in general. And finally, the communication about our findings. And just to give you an overview, the partnership, this is an innovation action, meaning that we do not only provide research, especially on the field in accounting, but also technical solution to the partnership. And each city, as you can see, has different partners inside. Usually they have a municipality, so it's that the interest of the city is actually granted. Small and medium-sized enterprise, they are building their business case and their business model based on our solution, and also Fab Labs and grassroots organization to ensure that citizens can actually meet and create innovation. And this actually resonate with what this morning was said about what Marianne said about Science City Lyngby. So how do you create spaces where a citizen can aggregate and actually produce some knowledge in that sense and be proactive? In our, just as a brief overview, in our project, each city, given that it's a bottom-up approach, has decided which is the focus that they are facing, and what are the elements and the challenges that they want to pursue in their transition towards circular economy. So just to give you a very brief overview, Amsterdam focuses on textile and life recycling, Berlin on water heat waste, which is a huge problem within our cities, but it's something that usually it's not easy to be perceived. It's not as easy as plastic, for example. Cluj-Napoca focuses on the energy consumption within buildings and how they can improve it. Milan on food markets, they call them food markets 4.0 because they would like to revive an agriculture that actually links local production to local consumption throughout the markets, the local markets that citizens used to buy food from, but are now almost dying.
Yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt you. That the time has
okay.
Yeah, we're
so
finished.
Sorry. I just wanted to say the last thing. You can find all our deliverables here.
Thank you.
So you can also have it there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christiane.
Perfect.
So that was all the talks today from our university representatives. So a big virtual high five to everyone. Thank you so much. We lost the sound in the studio, so I'm just using the mic here. For now, we would just like to highlight a few elements, and then you can continue the dialogue in the chat. Yeah, I'm so sorry. We will take the question first. So we have some questions in the comments, and I have put some questions down as well. So should we start with a question from the audience, Linda? Yes. So I will bring it over to you.
Yeah, okay. I'm apparently on the mic. So we have one particular question for you, Michael, with regards to the LCA's assessment coming from a startup. So that do not might have the expertise, time, or resources. Are there any good online tools and resources you can recommend with regards to the LCA assessment?
Do we have Michael with us still? Okay, so can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me? Yeah? Okay. So we have a question. I have a question for Kirsten. So if you're out there, you mentioned a few terminologies for the housing and the energy sector. So reducers and prosumers. If we should take this approach for a business-to-business context, for example, Alfa Laval, what would it look like for them as a company to approach some of their stakeholders in the value chain to take more responsibility? Oh, Kirsten is not here. Who's on the line out there? Can I get a head up? Who's there? And Michael, is he there? Okay, maybe you can have a question for Annette.
So Annette, in terms of the Congress.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
sorry.
I think we still have a number of the other participants.
So we take a question from the audience.
Yeah, that would be also both addressed to Michael or Kirsten. So if there's any other questions to the ones that are currently still with us, it is Jesper and it is Christiane.
Is Jesper here?
Yes, Jesper.
Okay. Yeah, Jesper. It's good that you're there. I have a question for you. So you mentioned systemic change and this paradigm change. So if you should take a systemic approach, what should, for example, the companies looking at waste, what should they do? So Linnea and Novo Nordisk, if they want to go about a system change, what is key for them to look into?
I would not dare to go into that case, but let's say within construction then, together with PhDs, we study circular economy from a systemic perspective on which new type of partnerships or network, research and development network, might be promising if the construction industry is going to lower the use of new concrete, because manufacturing of concrete is a high polluting industry, but it's also emittance of CO2 demanding. So there is this general circular economy strategy of lowering the use or reusing concrete. And a systemic perspective would mean that developers, architects, entrepreneurs would have to join in if efforts from the concrete industry or from the refurbishment industry or the waste industry would have any success in fulfilling such a demand. So some type of recycling within concrete have failed to reach the market, even though it's quite promising, as architects have failed to find it fancy to use, for instance. So it's not more complex than it's a question about crisscrossing barriers within the product chains, which actually is more than products here, but also is design. And also the ones who are taking care of the waste. When we talk about construction, it's specialized companies who demolishes buildings, who have a specialized technical, but also organizational approaches to that. And they're very important to join in. And also, you would need to have municipalities to open to have, when you are refurbishing or you are deconstructing a building, normally you take all things down and drive it outside the city at a dump, and then you build again with new materials. If you are going towards a circular economy, you would need to have provision of materials locally, and also to tear down, dismantle, and might also want to work on it in order to reuse it. That would require permits from the local authorities, but also cooperation with the neighbors around. Things like that.
So let's continue with the program. This is the first time I've experienced that the speakers are leaving before the program. That would never have happened in a physical panel debate. So normally it's the other way around, but we still have the audience here, so that's good. So we will engage you in the chat, and we still have some of the challenge owners there, so address the questions. And I just have a few highlights for you before we end today. Let me see here. Yeah, so just highlighting the deadline for sign up. So for the students still here, remember the deadline is 20th of August. And then the date for the actual virtual innovation sprint is the 27th to the 30th of August. And then again, videos and slides will be shared. And just to underlining and understressing that the team formation session is starting the 27th. So that means we'll take good care of you to form a team. You're in very good hands there. And then please spread the word out there. Any quote you like from the webinar, any tools, any talks, just highlight it on the social media. That we would appreciate very much. And then the chat will continue until 3:30. I just want to say a big thank you. It's been a pleasure. Yeah, I've enjoyed it very much. It's very warm in here. It's been a long day, but what an inspiration. So what do you say, Marie?
It's been absolutely great. And we actually know that a lot of you have been following us since the morning. So that's really, really great. I hope there's been a lot of inspiration, but hopefully we have also motivated you to participate in 2 weeks where we're actually kicking off the innovation sprint, and the whole weekend is going to be full of really, really nice, but also fun activities. And speaking of that, we've been sitting here for very long, so please engage in the chat. But before that, I have given myself the opportunity to actually stand up and show you what has been happening backstage while we're doing this webinar. So everything you see here is the studio. It's a nice couch, but all the things that you're not seeing is actually happening just behind the stage here. Here we have Tina and Uffe that has been backstage, making sure that everyone went on board when they were supposed to, checking the sounds and everything. Then we have Peter here and a lot of spaghetti wires going everywhere and nowhere, making sure that the presenters and couch are not stepping on it. Big help and a big respect on the whole setup that we're doing here. And if we just go out here, so we're actually going to leave the skybox, our meeting room that's hanging from the roof. We have a so-called war room, which is in here. So we still have Thomas hanging out. We have Anders that has been facilitating all the speakers and presenters that's been here. We have William that actually didn't appear on this slide today. William is a volunteer and he's our tech support. So all the respect and all the channels that we've been going on at the moment here. So a last thing, and now you get the opportunity to see our makerspace here. We have Analia and Jesus, so 2 volunteers from the SCG student ambassadors that are volunteering. They have been onboarding both today, but also for the last 5 weeks, making sure that you're aware of this event going on, but also that it's going to run smooth and creative throughout the way. So hope to see you in the weekend. Stay tuned, be active on the chat, and let us know if you have any questions. Thank you very much for today, and bye-bye from DTU Skylab.